Can you comment on the theories of Stephen Hawking, especially as is presented in his book, The Grand Design, and A Brief History of Time?
This is a very deep question and something that's fascinated me for many years. What happened was I would begin teaching Kabbalah certain places, and afterward people would come up and say, you know, this sounds very much like the Big Bang. And after I heard that 3 or 4 times, I said, I better look into this. And I started exploring cosmology, things written, popular accounts written by very fine physicists. And that became more intriguing to me than Kabbalah. For several years, I really put the Zohar aside, put my works of Kabbalah, and I just wanted to explore contemporary theories of the origin of the universe. Because as you know, Jewish mysticism began as an exploration of Ma'aseh Bereshit, the account of creation. So cosmology, how the world began, is central to Jewish mysticism. And we shouldn't assume that, you know, only things written before 1600 are relevant. Certain Kabbalists would say, you know, who cares about what science says? I want to study Torah. But I think we have to be humble enough to admit that we have things to learn from science. If we explore just religion and abandon science, or if we explore just science and neglect religion, we're really missing part of the human adventure and part of human wisdom. I think that science and religion each are part of the puzzle. We shouldn't, you know, be so simplistic as to say that Isaac Luria knew what Stephen Hawking would eventually come up with, that the great Kabbalist Luria in the 16th century somehow knew everything that modern cosmology would discover. But I think that science and religion can learn from one another. I'll come back to that in a moment. But let's look at Hawking first. Let's look at Hawking first. Hawking tries to explain how the universe began without a need for God. He really wants to explain the origin of the universe without invoking religious language or any theology. But from my point of view, that God that he has in mind is really a childish notion of God. As our teacher Zalman Schachter puts it, the God you don't believe in, I don't believe in either. So I would say that about Hawking's God. It's really a straw man or a straw God. To think that there's someone up in heaven running the show, I think we have to put aside that childish notion of God. I think Kabbalah gives us the opportunity to reimagine God as the energy that animates the universe. And that notion of God, that mystical idea of God as energy, is really compatible with the physicist's description of matter and energy. In other words, there's a divine aspect of creation that doesn't require a God separate from the universe. You might say that God is unfolding. God is constantly becoming, and we're part of that process. So science and religion can learn from one another.